Australia, 1901. Two cattlemen ride into a bush town carrying hard news for one woman and a plan for how to tell it. Listen for what they decide to leave out and for what the widow says last. Let's make a start. Two men came into town with news, and neither of them wanted to carry it. Andy reined in his horse on the rise above the main street, and young Jack stopped beside him. Below them lay the town, a dozen iron roofs, a line of dusty gum trees, and the timber hotel with the deepest veranda in the district. A veranda is a roofed, open porch along the front of a building. Past the hotel, in a small cottage, lived Mrs. Baker. Her husband had been their boss on the cattle track for 6 months, and their boss was dead. They had ridden 300 miles to tell her so. "We'll take a room first," said Andy. "A thing like this can't be told just any way. We have to decide how." Here is what the two men knew and wished they did not. Walter Baker had once been a good boss, fair, hard-working, a man stockmen were glad to follow. But on this last trip, something in him had quietly come apart. In every town along the track, he spent money he could not afford. His own pay first, then the money that should have gone home to his wife. He knew it, and he was ashamed, and shame stopped his letters. For half a year, he sent nothing home, no money, no word. Then, 2 weeks from the end of the track, a fever caught him. He lay under a canvas shade for 6 days, restless and sorry, too far from any doctor. On the 7th morning he died, his felt hat beside him, his stockman's saddle under his head. They buried him beneath a big gum tree. A gum tree is the tall, pale-barked eucalypt that grows all over that country, and cut his name deep into the trunk. That night they carried 2 chairs out onto the hotel veranda and sat down where the light from the open door could reach them. "She'll ask how he died," Andy said, "and we'll break the news, but we don't have to tell her everything. We can leave the worst of it out." Piece by piece, they went through the truth and decided what to keep. The fever, keep it, the fever was true. The 6 days of nursing him in the shade, keep those. The money, the shame, the silent months, leave them out. And where the missing pieces left holes, they built better ones. He had been saving to come home for Christmas. He had talked of her at the end. He had died quiet and at peace. Jack looked down at his hands in the light from the doorway. "It's lying, Andy, to a widow." "It is," Andy said, "and I'll answer for it. The truth can be a stone, and you don't hand a stone to a woman standing on an edge. We mean well, and this once, meaning well is enough. She has a boy who will grow up asking what kind of man his father was. What we say tomorrow is the story that boy gets, for his sake and for hers." They repeated the story to each other until it stood up on its own, until neither man had to reach for the next line. Then the light behind them went out, and they sat on in the dark listening to the empty street. Andy used 4 expressions out there on the boards, and every one is worth carrying. To break the news to someone is to tell them something serious for the first time. The men rode 300 miles to break the news to Mrs. Baker. To leave something out is simply to not include it. They left the money and the silent months out. If you mean well, your intention is kind, whatever your method is worth. That phrase forgives a great deal, and Andy leans on it. And you do a thing for someone's sake when you do it for their good, not your own. They came to the cottage at 9, washed and brushed, carrying Baker's saddle between them and his felt hat in Jack's hand. Mrs. Baker was waiting on her veranda in a plain black dress, very still and very calm. She brought them tea, asked twice whether they had eaten, and settled her boy inside the house with a picture book. Then she sat with her hands folded and said, "You were with him. Tell me." Andy had broken bad news before, but never like this, never with a whole night's careful work behind it. He set the hat down gently on the boards. "He spoke of you at the end, Mrs. Baker," he began. "I want you to know that first." So Andy told the story the lamp had built, the good season on the track, the wages saved in a belt for Christmas, the fever that came fast, and the 6 days they nursed him in the shade, cool water, quiet talk. How he never once complained, how at the end he spoke only of her and the boy, how he left the world calm like a man with nothing on his mind. Jack kept his eyes down and confirmed each piece. Mrs. Baker asked few questions and gentle ones. Was he in pain? Very little. Did he leave any word for his son? To grow up straight and mind his mother. She nodded slowly at that, as if it were exactly what she had expected, and looked out at the dusty street. Now 4 things you could point at. A veranda is the roofed, open platform along the front of a building. In the bush, half of life happens in its shade. A gum tree is the tall, pale-barked eucalypt of that country. One stands over Baker's grave with his name cut into it. A felt hat is a soft hat pressed from wool, held in both hands while hard things are said. And a stockman's saddle is the deep leather seat a cattleman rides in. Baker's saddle came home. Baker did not. When the men rose to go, she stood too, thanked them, and then was quiet for a moment. "The letters stopped in March," she said in the same calm voice. "The money stopped before that. A wife can read silence, gentlemen. I have known since the autumn what the track was doing to him, and I think I know why you slept so little last night." Andy stood very still, hat in his hands, and said nothing at all. "You meant well," she said, "and you did well. What you told me today is the story I will keep, and the one his son will be raised on. Thank you for building it so carefully, for our sake." She asked nothing more. She shook their hands at the veranda step, like a woman closing a door gently from the inside. They rode out at noon, past the hotel and the gum trees, into the wide yellow country north of town. The saddle stayed behind on her veranda rail, the felt hat stayed on a nail beside her door. For a mile, neither man spoke. Then Jack said, "She knew Andy, the whole time. Why did she let us tell it?" Andy watched the road ahead. "Because the true story is only what happened," he said. "The one we gave her, that one, she can live on." 3 things to hold before the road runs out. What had Baker done with the money that should have gone home? Which true pieces did the men keep, and what did they build in the gaps where the rest had been? And Mrs. Baker had known since the autumn, so why did she let them tell it and thank them afterwards? Sit with that 3rd one. The whole story turns on it. That was Henry Lawson's Telling Mrs. Baker of 1901, retold in plainer English. Lawson had walked that country himself, and he left the ending where we left it, on a road with a question nobody answers out loud. One thing to try tomorrow: describe somebody you know using "he means well," and listen to how much that phrase quietly forgives. That is this story in 4 words. There is a shelf of these on the channel. If today felt easy, take one a level above.